Okay, what I'm going to do in this video is I'm going to have a look at possibly changing the way some fault codes are being displayed in my file. I'm using the same file I used previously for videos, so I'm using the Passat PD130. I've opened it in the format of the includes some PD150 brake horsepower changes. In other words, this is the one that I've been playing with all along, so I now have the original over here plus the little red one, which is this one. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go and look at possibly making some file changes. I'm going to go and look at some EGR changes because people do tend to want to do that. I get asked regularly, can I blank off the EGR? And I say no, because if you do, you'll get fault codes. And then, of course, the next question that someone asks is, if I get fault codes, can I switch them off? So it seems a sensible thing to put into a video. So I'm not suggesting that people should blank off EGRs, and I'm not suggesting that if they do, they should reset fault codes, but this is something that can be done. Okay, now I want to find, let's say, P0401, which is a fairly common EGR fault code. So I go to search by its sequence 0401. That will do me. I'm going to search in hexadecimal. Now I haven't changed this to hexadecimal yet, so I'm just going to click forwards to go and search. Because I haven't changed this to hexadecimal, it doesn't stop the search working. It just is there, but I don't recognize it. So I'll just go change that to hexadecimal. And there we are, there's our 0401. So I've got one of them. The fact that this is very, very pale would tend to suggest that I'm not going to be involved with that. And that one's very, very pale as well. So again, probably not relevant to me. And again, now I'm actually in the block of coding. So that one might be something I would consider wanting to do something with. Now I'm going to skip through these and you'll see why when I get where I'm going. There's another version of the same thing, so there's one there and there's one there. There's yet another one. Don't be too put out by this. This is quite normal. These things often occur in several places in a file. Now this one is way out of kilter and is not with any of the others, and it's in a map, so that's totally irrelevant. It just happens to have a similar number, so we'll ignore that. Right, here's another one, and it's in the next block, so that one is probably a complete copy of one that was up here anyway. There's another version of it, just like before. And now you can see why I knew I was going to arrive at one in particular. I'll just get rid of that out of the way, because I've already had a little play with this to make life simpler for me when I'm explaining the video. So there we are, we've got a P401. And if I click on that, it will open 1025. If I go down here, I get a message from myself because I've been here before. Exhaust gas recirculation, EGR, flow, and I can't see the rest, but if I do that, insufficient detected. So there we are. So flow insufficient. Just going to close that down. I'm going to go back to the ordinary 16-bit numerical decimal view. Right, now let's have a look and see what we've got. So there's one fault code. Here's the other one that goes with it, because they're often in pairs. So if that was insufficient, then this one is probably too much. So if I go to this one, there we are, excessive flow. So that's too much. So I've got too much, not enough. If I look at this one probably won't be displayed as a P code, although it might be displayed as 19587. And what I find is regulation range not reached. So that's what that one is. And it will have its opposite, which is that one. And you can guess, can't you? There we go. Regulation range exceeded. So they are in pairs. And I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, ignore that, 5, 6, 7, 8. So if you watch the previous videos, you will know that that 8 is quite normal. The maximum number of codes for a fault path is 8. So I've got 8 possible codes and they're all being used. Now in one of the previous examples I showed 8. They were all arranged in a nice line in a row, so they were easy to find, and only 2 were being used. Here in this later ECU, the PD ECU, I've got all 8 being used, but unfortunately they're not in a nice little line for me to look across and go, oh yes, that one or that one. They're scattered, so I've got to go looking for them. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, or shall we do it properly? Let's go 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So 8 codes, 0 to 7. So there's our codes. Here, if you've watched the previous videos, you'll know 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They're what's sometimes called ambient conditions or environmental conditions. They're the conditions that tell the display what sort of information is being displayed. So this might give us a number plus a brief description, and this information might tell us that we're looking at injection quantity in milligrams per stroke. We might be looking at the current air mass actual value in milligrams per stroke. We might be looking at the all exhaust gas regulator actuator output, and that's in a percentage, and so a whole load of information to do with that. Right, so there's our code. So it's where's the rest of the information and what's the other information mean? Well, here we go. What have we got here? We've got big number there, which is probably an error count, and then followed by a healing count, and then I'll just ignore that. I'll go and look at this. Now that's unlikely to be an error count. It could be, but that is very unlikely to be a healing count. So these two are probably not equivalent to those two. And then I've got what's probably an error count and a healing count, error count, healing count, error count, healing count. So that's probably what those are. So if I don't want that error to show, what could I do? Well, what I could do is I could just type in a number that's so big it's never going to be reached when the count is counting. So if the count is counting time and I put a ridiculous number in there like 65535, which if you search around in a file you will spot here and there, look, there's one there and there's one there. So it's usually being used as something that's not going to happen. Do I want that to occur? Yes, I do. Okay. So there I go. I've got my 65535. So that error count should never be reached. I should never count that high. If by some miracle that account does occur, if I put 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 zeros in there and enter, it will heal instantly. So never happen. If you do, heal instantly. Right, I'll do that again. I'll do it for all of them. I'm not suggesting this is what you do, but I mean just so you get lots of examples of the same thing. So 65535, enter. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, enter. 65535, enter. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 zeros, enter. Oh look, one's already been done. 65535. So in there I'm just going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 zeros and enter. And what I could now do is I could load this file into the car and I could go and see if I get any errors. Because obviously if I get any errors, I'll either get the mill light come on the dash, or the mill light won't come on, maybe, but when I do a scan for errors, I might find that I've actually got errors displayed. Or another alternative is, of course, I do this, I go and check the car is absolutely perfect, there are no errors displayed, and then in 2 months' time or 3 months' time, I've suddenly got errors. And then when I scan the car, I find I've got EGR errors, even though I've got all these turned off. You think, well, what on earth's going on there? Well, what's going on there can usually be uncovered by looking at this, but in 8-bit view, because if I go to 8-bit view now instead, there's the ones we've changed. 65535 reads as 255, 255, and there's the 0000s. And I've got here an odd 49. And if I look over here, I've got an odd 17, and if I look over here, I've got another odd 17, And if I look over here, I've got an odd 001. Now, I believe that these are individual event counters. So in other words, if I make that 0, then there will be no event to count to. And if I make that one 0, there will be no event to count to. And if I make that one 0, there will be no event to count. So I'm just pressing enter each time. Have I missed one anywhere? Yep, there's one. If I make that one 0, there'll be no event to count to. Now that leaves me, with luck, having turned every possibility of an error off. But it still leaves me with these 3 odd values over here. Now I believe that this is the error count for counting up from 0 or whatever it's set on, which is 2, and this is the healing counter. So I'm going to set that to 0, and I'm going to set that one to 0. So they are now both 0. And this one I think is the priority counter, and I think it's using the binary data to decide on priority amongst a number of other things. And so if I bring that up and I view that like this, I get that information. And from looking at some of the other files that I've been searching through over the years, and again, it's very difficult to make hard and fast comments, because sometimes you work something out perfectly for one file, you do the same thing in a different file and it doesn't work. But I think that the one there represents 2, because 10 is 2 in decimal, and I think that means that the mill light should be on, and I can't remember what that one is, but I think that that's what's going on there. I could well be wrong, because like I say, it varies from file to file, and I haven't researched this file inside out before making these videos. I just one day decided, oh, I'll do that, and I picked this file. Okay, now if we've got this now correct, then I've still got all my faults in there, so the fault codes are in there. They will just never occur in terms of being counted up to, and if by some miracle they did occur, they would be instantly healed. And if they are driven by an individual event counter that may be every time I turn the ignition on and then turn it off again, I've set that to 0 as well, so it's counting from 0 to 0, so they should never occur either. And so with a little bit of luck, having done that, I should never get any EGR errors. Now just go back to 16-bit so that we're looking at what we were looking at originally. Let's assume that we are now correct. Obviously it'd be very simple to find out, wouldn't it? Because I load this file into my car, which already had EGR errors, or didn't. But I load it into my car, let's say, and I unplug a connection to the EGR actuator, which will throw up instantly faults about the fact that the line is unplugged. Or maybe I disconnect the vacuum pipe and plug it, or maybe I leave everything alone but I put a blanking plate in the EGR. But there's a whole load of things I could change which might well cause these codes to appear, and so obviously what I do now is I drive and see, do they appear or don't they? With a little bit of luck, and I've used this system before, the codes will now not appear because I have now switch them off. Now you can usually spot this pattern elsewhere because the manufacturers have used it before you have used it. So don't be surprised if, having made a change to a file, you look through the file and find the exact same pattern that you've just created somewhere else in the file. So in other words, there might well be somewhere around here 65535 that we used up there, followed by 0000, but there might also be one followed by 8960, the number that we created. Now I'm not sure whether I'm going to waste time searching around here all day. Oh look, there's one, look at that. So we've got 65535 08960. So it is possible that this one has already been dealt with by the designers. In other words, this was never intended to switch on at this point, and so therefore it's been preset not to switch on. It's very difficult to say without actually running some tests on that individual file. And of course, if every time I made some changes and then put them up onto YouTube as a video, I then had to test everything, I'd never get anything done. So I'm just putting up information on changes that can be made, but I'm not testing them on this exact file because there are not enough hours in the day. Okay, but I'm going to assume then that that is enough for anybody now to take any fault code, find it, and make changes to whether it does or doesn't appear in this file. So I'll stop there.